we'll be talking about a critical aspect of Power BI, of report design, which is conditional formatting. Most people are not aware of the functionality within Power BI. Some are very familiar with it in Excel, but not so much in Power BI. So today is an opportunity for you to see someone demonstrate its use, its value, and how you can take advantage of it. So we have today Tolulope Olowookere, and this session is brought to you by your BizEdge and MHS Analytics. Your BizEdge, we're a Microsoft Excel, Power BI, financial modeling, training company and consulting company based out of Nigeria. And we also have an online learning platform where you can take advantage of free templates, take our self-paced online courses. I'm going to share the link in the chat area. And your MHS Analytics is our Canadian entity. If you have family, friends, or you are based in Canada, North America, and you want value for money, and at the same time, someone who can also connect with you as regards to your experience and learning style, then that's the advantage that you get from engaging in MHS Analytics. We are able to understand both the background you're coming from and also the new environment you're moving to, and be able to create the training experience in a way that you get the most value out of it. So as regards our special presenter, her name is Tolulope Olowookere. She's a Microsoft Certified Data Analyst. I think she also has data camp data analyst certification. She's worked a number of years in different companies, providing solutions in the BI space, Excel, Power BI, and essentially helping companies automate processes as much as possible, unlock productivity gains, and then provide value for the client. So I will share a LinkedIn so you can connect with her. But at this stage, I'm going to hand over to Tolu. So Tolu.
Thank you so much, Michael, for the warm welcome, and welcome everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are from across the world. Our topic for today is conditional formatting tips and tricks. As our moderator earlier said, conditional formatting is a function that you may be familiar with in Excel and even in Power BI. But if they are this session is just going to help you like brush up on those skills and give you more clarity on how to use the function more effectively while at it. Thank you. So I would be sharing my screen for the meantime, then we'll dive into um practical excuse me, like practical tutorials. So conditional formatting is simply formatting based on a condition or based on a specific criteria. And what I mean, like for example, using if statements, you want to format a cell, and formatting in itself helps with the look and feel of your data. If you have a plain table, for example, and it just has so many numbers, for anybody, you can always improve the look and feel of your table by by adding formatting. But in this case, you are going to be formatting based on certain conditions or criteria. Yeah, and in Power BI, just like in Excel, we have different forms of conditional formatting. It could come in form of what do you call it, icons. It could come in form of background color, font color, and whatnot. So here, I think we'll just head on to our Power BI desktop and we'll work together. Okay, so I'm hoping everyone can see my screen so we can start together. Yeah. So the data I'll be using here, okay, thank you. The data I'll be using here today is going to be a let's say dummy data, sales data for a company spanning from 2018 to 2020. I have used this data before, but I just want to use it for I just want to explain conditional formatting more in depth using the same data. So there are some measures that I have created earlier that I wouldn't create from scratch in this class because it's not really covering the topic, maybe some things like time intelligence and whatnot. So let's just dive into it. First of all, I have my plain canvas. I'd like to bring in a slicer. This slicer would speak to dates. I also have my calendar table as part of my tables in this data model. So I'm bringing in a calendar table that speaks to, I'm bringing in month from my calendar table or date table. So this is how the slicer is bringing it up, but I don't want it to look this way. So I'll go to slicer setting and change the format to tile. I want it to look like this. I'm going to change from month to year. I want to the slicer should pick all the years that we have within our data. So I just switched it from month to year, and I have something like this. I'll just put it at the center. I can add some formats here. I'm going to increase the font so everyone can see the years we're speaking of. Now make it bold. For the background, maybe I should just add something light for it. No, it's too dark. For a bit of color. Yeah, so I've inserted my slicer for dates, and I said that my data spans from 2018 to 2020. This is a fictitious data, it's not real, it's dummy data, but it can work with anything you're working on. So conditional formatting in Power BI goes in two ways generally. So if conditional formatting works on almost all visuals, it depends on how you can manipulate and tweak it to your own liking. But in this lesson, we'll be focusing more on tables or matrices. So I'm going to insert a table right now. And for example, I want to see how much sales I've made over the months. So I'm going to click on months. So I have my months on the table inserted. I'm going to increase the size of the font so we can all see properly. So I have this table and I have months. I'll also bring in sales amount. So I have a measure that calculates sales amount. So it's just total sum of sales. I'll also bring in another measure that I created earlier that speaks to the sales amount last month. So I'll also bring that in. Now, it might look as if it does not make sense, but let's drill down to, for example, just 2018 rather. So this measure I inserted for sales amount last month speaks to how much the company made in previous months using the parallel period time intelligence function in the calculate function. That was how I was able to come up with this sales amount last month. Just want to increase the header, column header, so we can see properly. Okay. The next thing I'm going to insert is going to be I also have another function for variance. So I'm going to bring in variance. So comparing previous month and last month, I have this for measure called variance month. So it's just this month's sale as per 2018 minus last month's sale. And if the last month's sale is greater than the current month's sale, you have a decline because as you move on in the company month over month, you want to have an increase. You don't want to sell less in current month compared to last month. So some of the values here might be having negative values because the last month is greater than the current month. The next thing we're going to add is another measure. This time around is the variance, but in percentage. So this one just speaks to percentage variance. I don't need the totals. So I'll click on the visual, the table visual, go to format and then turn off totals. So it gives me something like this. This is a basic table. And if you're showing this to your stakeholders or your end users, it might just look meh. They might not be so interested in seeing what you have there, or it might even take them more time to like detect what month was you were performing best and whatnot. So in order to enhance the look and feel of this table, you have to um introduce conditional formatting. Excuse me. So for conditional formatting for tables like this, you have all the elements of this table now, all the columns, month, sales amount under my columns, I call it box right here. So if I click on this drop down, for example, you see this option that says conditional formatting. So let me just do it again so we're clear. Click on this drop down arrow. I'll see conditional formatting, and they are of different forms. You have background color, font color, data bars, and icons. So this means that on sales amount, I can apply any of these formats. So the one we're going to start with now is the variance months, this one. And it's going to be simple and straightforward. So let's work on it together. So for variance months, remember variance month is just this month minus last month. And if it's a negative, it means we performed better in the previous month. So I just clicked on the drop down and we go to conditional formatting. You can choose any of these ones. I think we should start with the background color. So with background color, when I clicked on background color, it brings up this window, and these are the formatting styles that you should be familiar with. We have gradients, rows, and field value. I'll explain what the three of them do. With gradients, it gives you like a color scale ranging from lowest to highest. So what happens here is that the condition is it goes to that column, looks for the lowest number, and applies a color to looks for the lowest number, apply a color, and the shade of that color increases up until it gets to the highest number. So you can always change this this color to whatever color you need, or maybe your company color or whatnot. Or you can also custom your lowest value. So if, for example, you want it to only affect a certain number and the minimum number is 20, you can just put that there. But in this case, we'll just leave it to with the default. So it's going from very light blue to dark blue. You can also add a middle color, but this middle color does not look so good. So I think I'll just ignore that for now. And then I'll say, okay. So if you can see my screen clearly, you see that the highest amount is what takes the deepest color. So that's how the gradient works under background colors. And the lowest amount takes the faintest shade of blue. And is this second one here. So that's how it works. So if you're not comfortable with a conditional formatting applied like this, maybe to you it does not really make sense, you can always clear it. You could go to the variance months where it was applied, and then you see remove conditional format. You can just say remove all or remove background color. Since it was background color that was applied, I can easily remove it and it goes back to normal. So that's about gradients, just taking the colors from the lightest to the darkest based on the values that you have on that table. Then for same thing. Okay, let's go on to the next one. I'm going to apply another formatting, and this is font color. So for font color, it can also work with that gradient, but since we already know how the gradient works, let's look for another style that we might need. And in this case, let's use rules. So rules can be a bit tricky. And what do I mean by that? Okay, what it's asking here is that you're using the style rules, and then you're applying it to the values only. That's the numbers you can see on that table based on this field, because it's the variance month field that we are trying to format right now. Then you have rules. Rules use stuff like if statements to state a criteria that the formatting should apply. So, for example, you can say it would be best to have a. I just want to reduce the size of her. I'll do it again. I want to be able to see the numbers while I'm applying the conditional formatting. So I said rules, font color, right? Then we're going with rules. So with rules now, you have to state an if statement to perform or to apply your conditional formatting. So it's always best to have an idea of the way your number looks like. I can see that most of the numbers are large, although they may be negative or positive. The bottom line is I want to apply two rules in this case. If the number is greater than 0, that's a positive number, I want it to be green. And if the number is lower than 0, that's a negative number, I want it to be red, to indicate red as the font color. You can do that by using these rules. Since I have two rules I want to state, you can add the second rule. So for the first rule, I'll say if the value is greater than, I'll just give a very large number. So I'll say like 100 E9. So it's like adding 9 zeros to 100. Now you have two options here, number and percent. This can be very confusing. It could be very confusing to a lot of people, because does this percent mean percentage values within your table, or what does it mean in general? I'll come back to that, but for now, since I know that I have numbers I'm dealing with, I'll choose number. And then so it should be less than, so it should be greater than minus 100 raised to the power of 9, that's with 9 zeros, or less than 0. And I want this color to be red. So if you don't have red in your color palette, just like me, you can choose more colors, pick something that is close to red, and just click outside. It applies red. And then for the other one, it has to be greater than 0 and less than, I'm also going to put a very high number now. So 100 E9, and I want the font color to be green. Since I don't have green in this palette, I'll just go to the green and pick a green color. Then I would say, okay, so this has to be number also. Number. Then I'll say, okay. And if you can see my screen, see that the numbers have been applied. For all the positive numbers, I can see that they've been formatted as green. And for the negative numbers, they've been formatted in red. So that's how we apply the font color. Then the next one we're going to do, let's work on the variance months. And this one is still go to the percentage variance month, I mean. So I'm going to the drop down here, and I would still click on conditional formatting. Now let's try to use icons. Now icons, many people are really drawn to icons, because just at a glance, you can see what the icon is telling you, whether there's an increase from the color or even the direction of the arrow. It could be left, right. So with icons, you can either use rules, excuse me, or field value. Here, gradient does not um work because is it on the arrow you want to apply gradient. It might be even confusing if we have gradient in this case. Well, so in for icons, you just have rules and field value. I would come to field value very soon. So let's work on rules just like we did earlier. So it has even given me an automatic rule for these three. So, but if you look closely, it's giving me percent all true. And if let me explain what this percentage means. It does not mean my it's not because my what's it called? It's not because my the values I have in the percentage variance month is decimal or whatnot. That's why it's giving me this. Percent in this case is best way to understand percent is percent in conditional formatting in Power BI looks at the values within your the list of values you have, looks at the highest value through to the lowest value. So what it does is that the highest value, it assigns it as 100 and the lowest value becomes 0, for example. I'll explain that better. So let's just work with what we have now. Then I'll get back to that very soon. So using icons with this variance by months, I just want to use two rules in this case. So I'll cancel one of the rows. And the rule is that when the value is greater than minus 10, and less than 0, I've changed it to number. I want it to be, let's say she give me a red circle rather. That's between minus 10 and 0. It should give me red. And if it's greater than 0 and less than, I'll just give a number because I know that the values I have in this variance months, the highest number is 0.13. So I'll give this a green. So between 0 and 1, I want it to be green. And anything in the negatives, I want it to be red, just like we did earlier. Change it to number. I'll change it also to number. And then I say, okay. So what happens is that it gives me icons to the left. And you can see that all the, excuse me. Sorry. I just wanted to zoom in. All the icons have been applied. And all those ones that are in negative are having a red circle, and the ones that are in positive are having a green circle. Straightforward, right? So let's just go back. If you need to make some adjustments, you can always go back to if the value field and click on the conditional formatting you want to edit. And in this case, they are the icons. So with the icons, I want the icons to show alone. I don't want those values beside them. So under icon layout here, you'll see left of data, right of data, or icon only. So if you just want the icons to show, you can choose icon only, and then I click on OK. So with this, I just have the icon. Another trick that we usually do is you can now clean up this header so it looks like it is part of the data. So to do that, I'll just double click here and just give one space. So it looks like there's nothing there, but there's a space. And this one speaks to all the percentage variance. So for the month of February, there was a drop. March, there was an increase, and things like that. It's giving more information, or it's giving more clarity to what the table is saying than we started before, right? So let's go on to explaining the percentage parts for conditional formatting under rules. So for example, I have a test table here that I created. Let me create another table. Let me open a new page. I'll create another table and I'll add attributes and value. So I'll just bring it to the center and increase the size of the font so we can all see clearly. Can also make it bold. And I don't think I need totals here, so I can just turn that off. So I have these numbers 86832, and maybe yeah, it's just fiction. So let's just assume these are the numbers we have. I just want to explain the essence of the percentage or the difference between percentage and number when using rules. So I'll go back to my column field and I want to apply the conditional formatting on these values. So I come here and I say conditional formatting. Then we're working on icons. So automatically it brought me to rules. Now, these rules here would apply perfectly. What happens with percentage is that it looks at, let me put this thing by the side so we can see. Doing it again. Conditional formatting, icons. With percentage, so I just want it to be by the side. It looks at the values that you have within the table and it assigns 0 to the least number and 100 to the highest number. So to the minimum number, it assigns 0% and the highest number is, assigns 100%. So it's not the value itself that is the percentage, but the assigning of percentage values to the least and the highest, and it takes it on like that. So with this, if I apply this directly, it's going to work perfectly well. So it's telling me between 0% and 30%, that's 1/3 of the values I have here. 2 is going to be 0% and 8 is going to be 100%. So I can say something like between 0% and 30%, that's 1/3. I want it to be red because those are the lower values. Can change it to a red down arrow. Between 30%, 30, 33% rather, and maybe 67%, I want it to be a yellow. I can just use a yellow arrow. And then between 67% and 100%, in this case, 100% is the highest value, which is 8. I would put a green arrow. Then I say okay. And it applies that to me. So it's showing that 2 and 3 are they fall under like 0 to 33% in ratio to the number of values we have here. And since 8 is our highest value, it automatically becomes 100%. 6 is like mid. So we have the yellow applied to 6 here. I hope that is clear. So percentage while using rules doesn't necessarily mean the values that you have in the table. Instead, it means it takes into consideration the values and gives the highest value a percentage of 100 and least value a percentage of 0 and shares it all through. I hope that's clear. So let's just go back here. Moving on, we'll also, if you noticed, we also had another type of, let me go back to where we were. Another type of conditional formatting style that says field value. So for this field value works with measures. So you can also use DAX measures to assign conditional formatting. And this one can be very handy for the most part because it even helps you with it takes away any form of confusion as far as you are comfortable using DAX and you know how to create measures. So we'll just create one for as an example. The measure we'll create, I'll just add it to my measures table. I'll create a new measure and I'm going to call it I'll call it indicator. Indicator. So here I'm going to use if statements. So if the first argument says logical test, if my variance, because I already have a measure that speaks to variance months, if my variance month is less than 0, remember we use variance months over here, so I know the values that I have there already. I want you to give me a red. You can just type in red in double quotes, or if else, I want you to give me a green. So the computer understands this colors in this way. But if you have maybe your company color has a specific hex code or a specific code that you would like to use, you can also apply the hex code of your company in the what's it called, double quotes, instead of writing green and red if there's a particular color that you'd like. So I've created the measure and I've called it indicator. Now, indicator is going to work even on my table. Let's drag indicator and drop it on the table. So it gives me green, red, but this does not make sense having green, red all through. So the best way to use a measure work in your conditional formatting is when you have another chart that's not a okay, you can also use it for a table, but let's explore it with other visuals. So I'm going to drop a column chart, for example, and I'm going to drop months from my date table, months, and I'm also going to use variance, percentage variance. Yeah, so it's showing me there's a decline and there's an increase and whatnot. But yeah, this looks good, but it would look better if we apply conditional formatting to it. So with conditional formatting using other visuals apart from the table and matrix, you can't apply them here directly. You don't have that option here. So what you do is to format this visual itself. So you have to go to this paintbrush icon that says format visual. In this case, I want to format the columns. So I'm going to go to the columns and then I'm choosing this FX symbol here. It says conditional formatting. So when I choose that, now I'm going to you can either use rules or you can use field value. And since we're exploring field value, I can just choose the field value I want. And it's asking me which field do you want to base this formatting on. Remember, I created a measure called indicator. This way it's going to work. So I just put in indicator and then I click on OK. And it applies that color that I used. So with this, everybody can see that there's truly a decline because it's even red and it shows in quotes, excuse me, danger. And other months there were increases also. So with this, I'm sure anybody that sees this kind of report would be eager to even look more and be interested in seeing what's happening. So that's how beautiful you can make your reports look with conditional formatting. Next thing that we might look at, let me go to the next page. Is data bars. So I'm going to clear this conditional formatting I have here. So just say remove all. So data bars is something we should be familiar with if you use Excel very well. It just gives you like a bar within your table. So negative bar and positive bar. So if there's a negative, it goes to the left. And if there's a positive, it goes to the right. I don't need to do anything special here. It looks through the values that you have in your table, lowest value to the highest value. You can also custom the value, and maybe you want it to start from a certain number. can put a certain number here, but I don't want to do that. Then when I'm done, I just say okay. What happens is this is how it gives me. So the highest bar is 8, and that's why it's very full. And lowest bar is 2. We can also try this with let's try it with in a table that has negatives. Maybe we should try it with this variance months now. So I'll click on the table, then I go to variance months, then conditional formatting. I was saying data bars. So the lowest value, you want this negative value. I want something that would show. I just change the color. And I can also choose to show the bars only. I don't any number that is in that column will be eliminated, and I'll just see bars only by checking this show bars only. And I say okay. So it's going to be applied this way. So this is how the conditional formatting works with data bars. I can also clear that, remove conditional formatting. I don't want data bars anymore. I want it to look how it was looking before. So for other what's it called? For other visuals, you might most likely need to use a measure, just like the way we exhibited with this column chart here. So with other visuals, you most likely use measures to apply your conditional formatting. And most times you can either use the if function or sometimes switch function in case you have more than in case you have more than 2 criteria that you want to build your formatting on. You can use the switch function. So that sums it all. I'm open to your questions, and if there are any, if you need any form of clarification on any of what I've touched. This session was just to brush up on our skills on conditional formatting and help us to help us to understand it better, especially the number and percentage parts that might be a bit confusing for a lot of us. So I'll be expecting your questions for now.
Thank you. Any questions? Really house, any question? Let me just check if I can see some familiar names. But any questions so far on what Tolu has covered? Okay, so Tolu, I'll manufacture some questions for you so that we can fill in
All
some of the
right.
time. Okay, great.
Okay.
So question one, I'm just, some of them might be obvious question, but just to bring up some things I've seen, different categories of user ask, especially those who are new to Power BI. So what if
Okay.
someone asks that, can I combine 2 or more conditional formatting on the same column?
Yes. Okay, so with that you can combine 2 or more. So let me share my screen again to demonstrate that. But sometimes I feel like it depends on what you're working on. So if it's not too clumsy, is a welcome idea. And if you feel like it's going to be clumsy, I wouldn't advise you combine more than one. So let's see how we can combine more than one. So maybe for this variance month that we have here, I want to apply a maybe background color also, since I've applied font color before. And my background color, maybe I want it to be gradient, or maybe a field value in this case, based on the field that we created, the indicator measure, using the indicator measure. And I say, okay, so it can apply. Now you have 2 types of formatting applied on this. So sometimes people use this when they want to, so because the format I had underneath was red and green, you might not be able to see it clearly. So sometimes people use the same exact color to like fade out what you can see under here. So yeah, the answer is yes, you can use more than one conditional formatting in one column.
Okay, thank you. And when
You're
you
welcome.
this particular example, I like the use case you gave because I also know that sometimes when people are trying to create heat map, that's the approach they use.
Yeah. Yes. So yeah, with heatmap, it can also work. Okay, so that's a very interesting question. So with heatmap, you have to create the formatting on each column to be able to achieve something like a heat map in Power BI. You adjust every background color to suit the criteria you're working with, and it to look somewhat like a heat map. Yeah,
Thanks.
you're
So
welcome.
one more question. Um,
Okay.
can we bring in our own icons?
Yes, you can bring in your own icons. That's a very good question, Michael. Thank you. So for the icons part, you most likely, or you just have to use your, a measure. So for instance, this what's it called? This indicator function, indicator measure I created here. You can have an icon maybe sitting in a web page or something. You can copy the URL of that icon and drop it in double quotes, just like I have here read. I wish I could show you an example, but I don't have any icon sets. But the way I'm explaining it is what's going to happen. So you just drop the URL of that icon in double quotes, and once you apply it using the icon function or under conditional formatting, the icons will be um the icons will be applied. So that one works with your measure. So you can only use that in field value for now. That's all I'm aware of for now. I hope I answered your question.
Thank you. Okay. People in the house, I'm doing all the work, and you guys are getting all the benefit of the question I'm asking. Any question from anyone else? Okay, so maybe I'll try to think of one more. If you have questions, just raise your hand or put them in the chat. If you raise your hand, I'll be able to unmute you, and if you put them in the chat, I'll read the question. Okay, so
Okay. I can also
one.
ask a question. Okay.
Sure, yes, yes, please.
I can ask a
Yes.
question to the house. So who can explain or differentiate between when you use rules and when you use field values? What are the when is it best to use each of them?
So you said rules and then field value.
Yeah, field value.
Hey, anybody's hand up? Not seeing, or anybody typing in the chat. What if we say we'll give a gift? All right. So maybe we'll give a gift then. We will give a gift from our uh, e-learning catalog. Let me share the link so that you'll see what's there. We'll give a gift. Now we have digital resources. We will give a gift. Okay. All right. So no one is volunteering to answer. Okay. Uh, all right. So I want to ask you one more question, which is
Okay.
that is there so are there some times where instead of using conditional formatting, even though yes,
Mm.
one can use conditional formatting, it might be better to use a chart. Are there like times where there might be overlap between chart and conditional formatting? And then like the data bar, I know it looks like a chart already
A chat on
in
it.
a sense.
Yeah.
So why would somebody
Yes.
now choose that instead of a chart, vice versa?
Okay. So if you are going to use a chart, for example, in place of something that looks like a data bar, you would use data bar when if okay, maybe you have some constraints that you just need a one pager kind of report. You don't want multiple pages because if you are transferring the data or the information from that table to create a new chart, it might take more space on your canvas. You might have to increase the size and do whatnot. Sometimes you might even just ignore using table and choose a chart instead. So it depends on depends on the number of things. So it depends. Number one, it depends on what maybe your stakeholder wants, and if there are people that would prefer to see tables over charts, that's something you could um use. You could use chat over tables in that case. And if they insist on having tables to increase the readability of the table, to be advisable to add conditional formatting. So for something like that, data bar is not necessarily like your go-to because it depends on the kind of data you are working on. Because the data bar, as you said, it already shows you you have, what can be replicated on a chart. So it still boils down to what your stakeholders want to see, and maybe the way your report is coming up, if there will be a need to add another chart, or you can just show that on a table. I hope that answers the question.
Thanks. Okay. So I think we can stop I can stop with just the usual. What advice would you have for people who are struggling with mastering Power BI? Let me put it that way. I know we've asked you some before, but just in case some people are completely new, so I decided, okay, let
Okay.
me ask people in a different way. So for people who are struggling with Power BI, what advice
Okay.
do you have for them?
So for anyone who is struggling with Power BI, the first advice I'll give is to keep practicing. So anything you've learned, try to practice it using data. Don't just watch videos or attend webinars. Just try and practice whatever you've learned. That's one advice I'll give. The other advice I'll give is to attend webinars like this and watch YouTube videos, because no man is an island. You might know a certain way of doing something, and you see that there are even more efficient ways of achieving the same goal just by watching other people work on data. So practicing and watching videos, joining webinars like this one would improve your your strengths in Power BI in general. And also be open-minded. Can always ask questions, and there's a lot of information on the internet, so that would also help.
Thank you very much. And
You're welcome.
Matt, I can see a comment from someone. Let me read. I think Martin. So Martin says, "Thank you. I'm completely new to Power BI, and this is my first attendance. So
Oh wow.
welcome."
Oh wow.
That's I think
Okay.
your answer now is even beneficial to him. Sure.
Yeah. And so for someone who is totally new to Power BI, this might be a leap from the basics, if I put it that way, because it's not in all cases that you apply conditional formatting as a newbie. So with that, I would advise that you follow more webinars like this. There might be webinars that would speak to beginners, so maybe creating a report from scratch, or even how to do the whole ETL process will be helpful to you. So you can look up on our old videos on social on YouTube to see how you can even get started with using Power BI. That's for Martins or anybody in his shoes.
Yeah. I'm even sharing the community link, and then I'll share the YouTube channel too. So
Okay.
recordings of our sessions are always there. You wanted
Yes.
to say something?
Yeah, I saw that Martins dropped another question. He said, do you have webinars for newbies like me? So when you join our community, there might be some um webinars that might speak to newbies. So it depends on um what webinar you're entering. So, and I would advise you don't, like, even if it doesn't speak to newbie, you can always attend because there might be one or two things that you would pick up from the webinar.
Okay, thank you. I'm putting the YouTube channel link.
Okay. All right.
Right. So I think we are gradually, done with the usual things. I've asked all the questions. We have given the advice on. So thank you, everyone. I think at this stage we can bring the session to a close. Thank you, Tolu, for the very clear, well illustrated session, and thank you to everyone who has joined. Okay, I see Martin is already becoming more active. He's joined the community link. Thank you to everyone who has also attended today. Thank you for making out the time. And we hope to see you again next week. We're trying to do it weekly. And if you I've shared here in the chat, you can give us your feedback. Maybe there's a particular type of topic you want us to do more of, any feedback that can help us to improve the series. And if you are interested in speaking or know someone who we should bring on the session, there's a link I've also shared. You can forward that to them. And if you are interested, one aspect of learning is also teaching. So at some point when you've mastered something, you find out that teaching it becomes a way to expand your knowledge. When you are not able to add to your knowledge, when you've plateaued, teaching helps you to unlock more ways of learning, more use cases, because you end up researching. No matter how good you are at something, if you need to speak in front of people on it, you will do a bit more research than when you're just doing it for yourself. And that always uncovers things for you as someone who others come to. So take opportunity to train, to teach, take it seriously if you someone who want to master what you already are good at. So I'm just saying, if you're interested, we are a very friendly environment. We have some things we check for so that at least we know that the thing you want to tell us about is something you're also good at. But we are welcoming, like, you can always submit your indication to present. So thank you to everyone, and most especially to Tolu for the well put together session. And have a wonderful Sunday to everyone. Bye. Thank you.
Bye. Thank you so much for joining.